Seems pretty good. All right. What have we been learning about? What have we been going over lately? It starts with this idea of Hellenism, right? It starts with this idea of Hellenism. Hey, there is a bullet point slide on there. Let's pull that up real quick. I love doing reviews because if you do reviews, by the end of it, after you've reviewed this 14 times, you start to remember it and memorize it, right? How do you remember phone numbers? Well, we don't have to do that anymore, but how did you remember phone numbers? You typed it over and over and over and over again until you're like, wow, I finally know your phone number because I've done it so many times, right? Do you know why? Get this. Do you know why there's 7 digits in a phone number? Like 282, 1234. Why is there 7 digits? Yes, it is. The average number that most people can recall. That's exactly right. Good job, Travis. You have studied that, haven't you? Yeah. All right. So let's go back and do a little review. Guys, check this out. This is the stuff that I have to go through when I do like reviews. Look at this. I don't even... 3,300 words. This is why I bold some of the stuff that I want to recall on. Okay, so we got our slide pulled up here. Remember 586. I don't remember 586, but the historians do. So in 586 BC was when the Israelites went off to Babylonian captivity. Remember that? And then what happens? They come back to Israel. Why did they come back to Israel? Because of the decree of Cyrus. Okay, the decree of Cyrus says that they can go back to Israel and start to rebuild. 332, Alexander the Great comes in with his conquest, right? And he brings the 4 pillars of Hellenism. Remember what those are? Academics, education, healthcare, and what's the last one? Entertainment, yes. And we still live by those today, don't we? Okay? So then from 330 to 198 is the Ptolemene rule. All right? This was just that guy named Ptolemy. All right? Remember we can pull up that one map on there. It's going to be towards the top, the funny colored one. And we can see the Ptolemies. Remember? We got Jerusalem right there. And we got Seleucids are the green. The Ptolemies are the green. The Seleucids are the pink. The Seleucids are going to overtake the Ptolemies, which then you have the Seleucid Empire, or the Seleucid rule. And remember, they're really oppressive. They press Hellenism upon these people, right? Upon the Israelites. The Ptolemies, they didn't really do that. They're just like, well, we'll just, let you lap it up. We'll just lay it in front of you. But the Seleucids push it. And then what happens? In 167 BC, the Maccabees revolt, right? Because the Seleucids come and what do? Do you remember what starts the revolt? They sacrifice something on the altar. What is it? They sacrifice a pig on the altar. And the Maccabees go bananas and they overthrow the empire of the Seleucid Empire. And then Israel is actually ruled by itself for about 100 years. Okay, until like 63 BC when Rome comes. 63 BC. So, that's that. Any questions on that? Great, we'll review it again next time, okay? Just to make sure we get all of that. By the way, these are called the silent years. Between like 400 to, 0, really. From negative 400 to 0, okay, if that makes sense. There's silent years, okay? Which that means there's nothing really written. Like Malachi is the last book of the Old Testament, and it was the last book to be written, okay? The last prophet to really speak and be wrote down. And then it starts all over again with Jesus, right? Okay, so right now we're figuring out these silent years to find out why God sent his son at this specific time. Remember Galatians 4:4? At the appointed time when Christ sent his son, okay? That's what we're all leading this all up to. Why did Jesus come at this specific time? Now we have to go through these groups to understand why Jesus came. Remember these groups, there's 5 groups. Remember we're talking about them. We talked about the Pharisees last week. This week we're going to talk about the Zealots, okay? and who the zealots were. Now remember, these Pharisees, they had a lot of things figured out, but what was the one thing that they lacked? Love and compassion. They lacked love and compassion for others, right? Because they thought they were right, everybody else was wrong. Okay? I've been there before. I've been a Pharisee. Okay, so let's start in on the Zealots. So the Zealot movement started when, pull that map up one more time. Go to the other one. Yeah, go to the next one. What's the next one? Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's do that one right there real quick. Okay. So the Zealot movement started when, remember, they came back to rebuild, all right? And when they came back to rebuild, they rebuilt the temple, which was in Jerusalem. Here it is. It was in Jerusalem, okay? So they came to Jerusalem, rebuilt the temple. Who was in charge of the temple? Do you remember? The Sadducees were the one who were in charge of the temple, okay? So they were in charge here. Guess what? They were kind of corrupt, weren't they? Okay, we'll talk about them like next time, which is going to be so much fun. So this group called the Hasidim, they said, you guys are corrupt, you guys are nuts, we're going up north, we're going to live in Capernaum, way up there by the Sea of Galilee. Okay, so they head up north, the Hasidim head up north. They turn into two groups. Number one is the Pharisees. And number two is the Zealots. Now see, the Zealots had the same mindset as the Pharisees. Did the Pharisees love the text? Very much so. Did the Zealots love the text? Very much so. They just had a different way to apply things. So they applied things more along the lines of, hey, well, if you don't see it the way I see it, then yeah, that's just too bad. We're going to take you out. Okay? All right. Well, let's learn more about that. So the Pharisees, remember this? So the Pharisees were called the Parashim. Remember what that was called? And remember they were really arrogant. And this Parashim word means that they were the pious ones. Now, you want to know what the Zealots were called? This is kind of a cool name. The Kanaim. They were called the Kanaim. K-A-N-A means zealous. So they were the zealous ones. Now, when I say Cana, you may think of Cana, right? Have you ever heard of the word Cana in the Bible? Where does it come up? Jesus' first miracle in the book of John happens at a what? A wedding in Cana. So guess what? It happened at a wedding in a zealot town. Huh. So did Jesus have anything to do with the zealots? Well, we're going to find out that there was like 6 of them that he had right there. All right? So I do want to mention this part here. We hear about the zealots in our Bible more than we recognize because they are usually not called zealots, actually. They're usually called robbers, thieves, rebels, revolutionists, or bandits. Okay, where is one of the places that you're thinking about right now that you hear this? Any of them clicking? The Samaritan story? There's one that's even more popular. When Jesus was crucified, who was on his left and on his right? Rebels. It says, your Bible probably says there was rebels on the right. Now see, in the Greek, that word is called lestai. And it means revolutionist or bandit or rebel is what it means. So who was on his left and on his right? Zealots. Zealots were on his left and on his right. Your Bible also might say that there was 2 thieves crucified with him on the cross. If you think about this and you go back in Roman culture, you can look and you can say, well, thieves, that wasn't a crucifiable offense to be a thief. I mean, you could steal something, but it didn't garner crucifixion. Crucifixion was for those who are revolutionists, who were going against Rome. So it makes sense that 2 zealots would be on the cross next to him, right? Okay, so where were they located at? these zealots. Now remember, we said they did go up north. There's another picture of the Dead Sea that's a little bit closer than that. Yeah, or not the Dead Sea, the Sea of Galilee. That's what I meant. Okay, remember last week we talked about the Pharisees. And if you want to move your cursor over there, yeah, just go over on that side. Yeah. Okay, so you see that place called Chorazin, right up north there, and Capernaum, and Bethsaida. Now see, those are the three like triangle. Now remember, that was where the Pharisees went mainly, because that's where all of their teaching was done. Remember that was like the Harvard of that time? That's where all of the really smart Pharisees went to learn. Okay, now you see where it says Upper Jordan River up there? I need like a laser pointer. Where it says Upper Jordan River. Okay, you see where that river comes right there? Yeah, right there. Oh, that's a really big one. Okay, so on the left side of the river here, did you know that King Herod had 3 sons? He had 3 sons. They were named Herod Antipas, is the one that we know of. And then there was Herod Archelaus, which we're not going to worry about him right now, so forget I said that. And then Herod Philip. Okay, so Herod Antipas was in charge of the left side of the Jordan River. Herod Philip was in charge of the right side of the Jordan River. Okay? So, this is how these, now if you go right above, oh, it's on there, Gamla, on the right there. That was their main compound that we're going to get to in just a minute. Okay, so why do you think they would be on the right side of the Jordan River? We're going to talk about it. Okay. So there was 2 locations that the Zealots really started off at. One was called Mount Arbel. Mount Arbel, and if you see Magdala, it's pretty much right next to Magdala. Mount Arbel is not listed on here, but it's right at Magdala, which is actually where Mary was from, Mary of Magdala. And let's go to some pictures to look at Mount Arbel. It's going to be the first picture on the bottom. This is Mount Arbel. This is where they lived. Doesn't that look like an awesome place to go? Yeah, it does. Guess what? They lived in caves. Isn't that crazy? Why did they live in caves? Well, listen, the Zealots and Herod, they didn't get along very well, okay? Because the Zealots would always try to go fight Herod or kill his men, which is pretty much Rome. They're trying to fight and kill Rome as well. But they would push back, right? Rome and Herod, they would push back and push back and push back until finally they pushed back far enough that they actually built their houses in caves like this to protect their families. Okay? So this is what happened. So let me tell you a little bit about their relationship. They would come, hide in the caves when Rome came, okay? And Rome wouldn't be able to get to them. So when Rome would come, the men would all run away, and it would just be the women and children there, and Rome actually didn't harm the women and children at first. This is what their relationship was like. Now, you might say to yourself, you don't have any zealot tendencies until these kinds of things happen. Now check this out. Rome actually started recognizing that, like, oh, when we come and try and push against them and try and take them out, the men run away and the women are left. So they said, we're actually going to start attacking the women and children. And you see this right here. What they would do, this is recorded in Josephus, if you want to go back and learn about like Roman history. What they would do is they had a pulley system that they would lower down, light fires at the entrance of the caves and blow the smoke in there, so the women and children had to come out. And then, not only did they have to come out, but they would grab them and throw them to their death at the bottom. If that happens, all of a sudden, do you have zealot tendencies? If somebody comes in and takes your wife and your kids, do you like that very much? As a man, is that okay? Are you going to have zealot tendencies and want to fight back against that? Yeah, of course. Now go to the next picture. We can see like some more, like this is a more zoomed out version of what Mount Arbel looked like, the first place they lived. And you can see all the caves just littered in the side of the hill. And go one more. And this is the last picture I have. Look at that. Look at all the caves just littered in the side of the hill. Insane. That is insane. And if you're trying, why did they do that? Well, when Rome would come and try to fight them, imagine trying to fight uphill to try and, overtake something or overtake somebody. I mean, let alone, it'd be hard to go home. I mean, let alone have somebody come and attack you. You would always have the upper hand because you'd be able to see everything that's going on, right? That was the last picture I think I had on that. I got a couple more pictures of Gamla, but we'll get there in just a minute. I'm going to try and stick to my notes here again because I want to make sure I do this justice. If you're ever confused or you have a question, just raise your hand because I want this to make sense, okay? All right, so yeah, let's just go to Gamla. Let's do those other two pictures. So let's go to the next picture. It's going to look like a mountain. There you go. So they ended up finding out, the Zealots, that Herod was always going to come and attack them, and Rome was always going to attack them. So they pushed back, like they retreated back to this place called Gamla, which is on the east side of the Jordan River. So, is that Herod's territory anymore? Herod Antipas's territory anymore? It's not. It's his brother Philip's territory. And guess what? He wasn't near as oppressive as Antipas was. Antipas wanted to be made a king. That's what he wanted. So he wanted to make Rome happy. So they were just like, yep, that guy is going to be a king someday. He's going to be the king. Philip was like, sure. I don't really care. I got my little territory over here. That's good enough. So they went and settled in this place called Gamla, which is the east side of the Jordan River. Makes sense, right? Now this is Gamla. It's they liked hills, I guess, for some reason. So they went and lived on another hill. If you look right here, this is actually their synagogue that they built right here. That's really cool. There's another picture. If you go to the next one, it's actually going to show the synagogue. Yeah, it's right here. Right there. And you know what Gamla means? It means camel. And I think I guess it looks like a camel. I don't know if that's why they named it that or not. I have no idea. But Gamla means camel. So if that means something to somebody, then great. Okay, so this was their relationship, right? Sound like a good relationship? Not so much. Not so much. The Zealots and Rome and Herod, they did not get along, right? So they pushed back. Hey, pull up that picture of the Sea of Galilee really quick. I just want to show you. See that place Gamla over there, which is on the east side of the Jordan River. Prior to that, they were in Magdala, right on the west side. So they went all the way over there to Gamla and built their house there. Okay. So there's one more thing that we need to talk about within the Zealots. Okay, they had this little, what do I want to say? This little group that pertained to the Zealots. It'd be like a subheading of Zealots. They were called the Sicarii. The Sicarii. And they were like the assassins for the Zealots, okay? I can't make this up. Look it up, and if you're interested in it, look this stuff up. They were like the assassins for the Zealots. And do you know what Sicarii means? It means little knife, which means like a dagger, all right? So this is what they would do. They would carry these daggers in their sleeves, and once they got close to a person they were targeting, they would kill them. You know, they killed the high priest in the temple because he was corrupt. They would kill Roman soldiers. If they were alone with a Roman soldier, their mentality was, if I'm alone with you, I'm going to be the only one leaving. See how we're figuring out this relationship, right? They did not like each other. So let's think about this. Remember, they came from this Hasidim movement, which is the Pharisees and the Zealots. So why did they do this? Like, how did they defend their actions of what they did? Let's go to Exodus 34:14. And if you have your Bibles, you can open them up if you want to. If not, we'll read it on the screen. By the way, these maps that I pull up here, if you didn't know this, if you go all the way to the back of your Bible, there is probably a massive amount of maps that if you've never been there, you didn't even know was there. And they'll show you all of this, and they'll explain a lot of this stuff too, where people were, and yeah, it'll just make things make a lot more sense. So, Exodus 34:14. This is how they defended their actions. Do not worship any other god, for the Lord, whose name is jealous. Let's stop there. Jealous in this translation is a bad translation because this word actually in the Hebrew is zealous. Our God is a zealous God. Now let's go to, I didn't put this on here, Numbers 25. So there's a story of, does anybody know the story of Phineas? So the story of Phineas. Now, there were Moabite women. It's in Numbers 25 if you want to go read it. Now, there were Moabite women that were seducing Israelite men to sleep with them and worship their gods. Okay? Does that sound like a good idea? To worship pagan gods? No, it doesn't. So this is the story of Phineas. So there was a Moabite woman and an Israelite man who went to the tent of meeting, which is the tabernacle, went to the tent of meeting and actually had intercourse right in front of the tent of meeting, the tabernacle. And this drove Phineas bonkers. So he took a spear and drove the spear through both of them and killed both of them. Read the story about it, Numbers 25. And this is what God says. At least somebody was zealous for my house and didn't want to desecrate my house. Go read the story. And then there's one more. 1 Kings 19:10. This is Elijah. And you'd probably know most of this story. But, okay, let's read about this here. He replied, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. Anybody remember what Elijah did? He was the one that called down fire, right? You remember any of that part? Where he called down fire? Okay, if you don't, look it up, read the story about it. Tell me that's not zealous, right? Now, in just a little bit, we're going to look at the disciples and we're going to see, did the disciples have any zealot tendencies? Do you know two brothers who tried to call down fire? James and John did, didn't they? He's like, Jesus, do you want us to just call down fire and destroy them? Right? We're going to get there. We're going to get there. And the Maccabees. Now, I was talking about how they were defending their actions. The Maccabees was the next one on how they would defend their actions as well. And we talked about that with the Maccabean revolt. So, now I want to get into this idea of the zealot tendencies of the disciples. Any questions so far? No questions. No questions. Okay. If it doesn't make sense, just raise your hand because I want this to make sense, okay? If we understand this, like these are the pinnacle groups of the gospel. And like if we understand these groups, we can find out why Jesus talked to them the ways that he did. It deepens your understanding of the gospel and the parables that Jesus teaches about. Because then we'll know why Jesus is saying this to them, okay? All right, so let's talk about the disciples here. So there's 3 disciples that we can see as zealots, like just almost right off the top. Simon, the zealot, well, it says it right there. It says Simon the zealot, so he was clearly a zealot. And Judas, remember? Judas's last name was Iscariot, Ishkariot in the Hebrew, the man from Keriot. And Keriot was a zealot compound. And there's one more, Nathaniel, whom you probably know as Bartholomew as the disciple. Do you remember where he was from? He was from Cana, that zealot compound. So, and I know we've talked about this before, but thinking of Judas as a zealot makes a lot of sense on why he would have wanted to betray Jesus, right? Do you remember when we talked about this like a week and a half ago? Or a week and a half ago, like a month and a half ago. I wasn't here on a Wednesday. like a month and a half ago, we talked about this. And why did Judas want to betray Jesus? Yeah, he wanted to force him to have to fight against Rome. And Judas had been with Jesus this whole time. So he understood what Jesus had done. He's been watching and seeing what Jesus has done this whole time. So he says, well, I'm just going to get Jesus to do this thing, and he's going to have to fight back. But he doesn't. But he doesn't. And why would Judas think this is a good idea? Well, he's seen Jesus raise people from the dead. So he's like, well, if we fight against Rome, he can just raise him from the dead. If something happens, we'll have a never-ending army. Well, he saw Jesus feed 5,000 people and 4,000 people. So in Judas's mind, it's like, man, he can raise people from the dead. He can feed us anytime we want. Food isn't a problem. And he saw Jesus heal people multiple times. And he's like, well, he can just heal them. He doesn't even have to raise them from the dead. He can just heal them before they even get there. We have this thing all figured out. Jesus, we could do it. We could overtake Rome with this. Just with this. Does it make sense a little bit? Why Judas is like, yeah, this is a good idea. We're going to force Jesus into this. What better time than being in Jerusalem with the high priests, the chief priests, the Sadducees? What better time to do this right now? Right. It was never about the money. Speaking of the money, how many pieces of silver was it? 30 pieces of silver. Go back in your Old Testament and see where you find 30 pieces of silver. Okay? That's your homework. Go see where you find it. Because you're going to go back and you're going to find it and you're going to be like, no way. That actually connects to the Old Testament as well. Go read it. Go read it. Okay. Where am I? Okay, let's go back to the map one more time. That map of the close-up of the Sea of Galilee. Yep, that's the stuff right there. Okay, so do you remember how many disciples came from Bethsaida? There's 5 disciples that came from Bethsaida. Peter and Andrew, James and John, and Philip. Now, see how close they are to the zealot compound of Gamla. So we wonder, do they have any zealot tendencies? Now, we don't know a whole lot about Andrew or Philip, but James and John were the sons of thunder, and they wanted to call down fire. Let's do it, Luke 9, 51 through 56. I think I have that pulled up there. Yeah. So this is James and John, the sons of thunder. As the time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. And he sent messengers on ahead who went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him. But the people there did not welcome him because he was heading for Jerusalem. When the disciples, James and John, saw this, they asked, "Lord, do you want us to call fire down from heaven to destroy them?" But Jesus turned and rebuked them. Then he and his disciples went to another village. Okay, does that sound like a zealot tendency? That sounds exactly like what Elijah did. Okay? Now just imagine traveling with them, and James and John come back, and they're like, "Hey, Jesus, do you want us to just call down fire real quick from heaven?" Like, just imagine this. Actually imagine this. Like it's happening right now. Like somebody walking back to you and they're just like, "Do you want us to call down fire from heaven?" And you're like, "What? No. What? No, don't do that. Why would you do that?" Right? This sounds like a ridiculous thought. But they seriously said this because they knew the prophet Elijah did. Next one. There was James and John. So now we have Peter. Does Peter have any zealot tendencies? Well, we know Peter likes to speak out a lot. Peter likes to just talk and be the leader of the group, right? Jesus calls him the rock. Petros is what he calls him. And we got to look and we think, well, does Peter have any zealot tendencies? I think he does. Can anybody think of one? Probably the main one. Yes, he does. He cuts the ear off of who? Malchus. Who said Malchus? He does cut the ear off of Malchus. Now, check this out. Do you think Peter has a giant sword that he whips out and just shing, whacks off his ear? It's a dagger, huh? Because if you go back in the Greek and you look at it, we think of a sword, and it's like as long as this table, and Peter's just walking around with this sword that he whips out and hacks off the guy's ear because he has really bad aim and he's actually trying to kill him, right? Do you think he's trying to kill him? He's not trying to kill him. Watch this. Watch this. He pulls out his dagger. And if I am Peter and somebody is standing, 6, 8, 10 feet in front of me, I can't just reach out and whack his ear off. What do I have to do? I have to attack him. I have to go after him and I have to attack him. Now, look at this. Oh, I should have pulled this up. It's in John somewhere. Look in John, I don't know, somewhere later. I'm going to say like 15-ish. If you find it, awesome. But we know what happens. I was just going to read it, but we know what happens. So he goes and he cuts off the ear of, this is what it is. This is what it is. I want to read it. Okay, great. We just got it up here right now. Okay. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword. Bad translation. Look it up in the Greek. It is not a sword. It's a dagger. Okay? That's called a sakari. It's a dagger. Drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Stop right there for a second. Okay. We hear the word servant. The servant of the high priest, who must be somebody that is taking care of the high priest, right? Wrong. The servant of the high priest is the next in line for the high priest to learn the duties of the high priest. This is the high priest's. Who was the high priest? Does anybody remember? Caiaphas was the high priest. This is Caiaphas's probably oldest son. That's who that is. And he goes and he whacks off his ear. And you might think, what's the meaning of this? Why is he cutting his ear off? This means nothing. He should have just killed him. Hold on a second. It's about to get good. If he's missing a body part, he can't serve in the temple. He can't serve in the priesthood if he's missing a body part. This is what these Sakaris would do. They would go cut off a body part because it was worse to not have a body part than it was to actually be killed. Because then they couldn't serve in the priesthood. They had no way to get in there. They would be exiled. They would be kicked out. They would have nothing. No wealth. Nobody liked them. Nobody wanted them. Remember? That's part of the Sadducee group. Nobody wanted to be around them. So they would have been kicked out and then probably later just killed by a zealot or somebody. Missing a body part was worse than actually being killed to them. Leviticus 21:16. The Lord said to Moses. Now, this is God talking to Moses. He's writing Leviticus here, which is like the owner's manual that you'd have in your car, right? Except this is like the owner's manual for the temple. Okay? So, the Lord said to Moses, I think we go to 21. Say to Aaron, for the generations to come, none of your descendants who has a defect may come near to offer the food of his God. No man who has any defect may come near. No man who is blind or lame, disfigured or deformed. No man with a crippled foot or hand. Or who is a hunchback or a dwarf, or who has any eye defect, or who has festering or running sores or damaged testicles. No descendant of Aaron the priest who has any defect is to come near to present the food offerings to the Lord. He has a defect, he must not come near to offer the food of his God. Now, there's a lot of talking about having a defect in there, isn't there? And what can't you do if you have a defect? You can't serve in the temple. That's why Peter cuts off his ear. Any questions yet? Okay. But what does Jesus do? He heals his ear back. The one who is so corrupt, like massive corruption. We're going to talk about it, okay, in a couple weeks. Jesus says, no, Peter, we're not here to do that. Me, Jesus, well, I'm not Jesus, but as Jesus would say, I'm not here to do that. That's not my story, okay? Write in the wrong book, Peter. This is the book that I want to write. And he heals his ear. What is the root of that? That is love. So if there's a Pharisee standing there, they're like, what are you doing? I'm loving that guy is what I'm doing. And I'm healing him. And you know what else I'm doing? I'm forgiving him. He's going to kill me. But I'm going to forgive him. Forgives the corrupt high priest. What if we did that for the people who have wronged us? Maybe for a whole country that has wronged you at something, right? Because they represented pretty much the whole community right there. What if a whole community has wronged you? That is forgiveness. I'm almost done. Does anybody know whose house they take Jesus to after that? They take him not to the high priest's house, not to the temple, not to the Sanhedrin. They take him to Annas' house. And who is Annas? He's not the high priest. He was the high priest about 20 years, about 30 years before that. He was the high priest. Annas had 5 sons. And one of them, he had 5 biological sons. And then he had a son-in-law, which makes 6. The son-in-law, his name was Caiaphas. All 5 of Annas' sons had already been high priests. And now it's Caiaphas' turn. These 7 families right here that we just talked about, the 5 sons, the son-in-law, and the dad, which gives us 7. These 7 families right here, they make up what's called chief priests. The 7 people right there and their family. When you read in your Bible and you say the chief priests and the teachers of the law, those chief priests are those 7 families right there. So Jesus doesn't go to Caiaphas' house afterwards. He goes to the house of Annas. And that is what we're going to get into next week. Why does he go to his house? Wait, why does Annas even have a house at that time? Wouldn't it be the high priest's house? Or wouldn't he go see the Sanhedrin, right? Who was the 70 people that were in charge of the Israelite government at that time, right? Wouldn't he go see the Sanhedrin and go before them? Why is it this one chief priest's house? We're going to talk about that. Okay, I have this in bold. It says this is the end right here. So I think this is where I'm supposed to end. So as we look at these 5 groups, okay, we see that they have a hatred for somebody. Remember, these 5 groups are going to have good qualities about them, and they're going to have bad qualities about them. And you read through this, and you might listen to this and be like, how do the zealots even have a good quality about them, period? Guess what? We need zealots. Let me describe a zealot to you really quick. A zealot is the person that you're going to sit down with at a table, and you're going to be outlining the things that you want to do. I want to do this, 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 and I want to do this. And that's outlined right there, baby. And that is the way we should do it. And this is what the zealot does. He stands up and he starts walking away. And we're like, whoa, hold on. Where are you going? What are you walking away for? Well, we got to go do it. We're going to go do it right now. We're like, well, no, I just wanted to talk about it first. Oh gosh, how many times do we do this in our lives? We talk about stuff. We're like, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. And 10 years go by and you're like, well, I thought about doing that, but I never did that. That's not a zealot. A zealot is the person that gets up and they go get it done right now. Like it's just going to happen. Every time I think about that, I think about Brandon for some reason. I don't know why. But he is always the guy that just says something and it's just like next week you're like, what happened? Well, yeah, it's because I went and did it. Nobody else is going to do it, so I just went and done it. Zealots have a good quality. Zealots have a good quality because they are the people that are going to push you to go. They're going to be people that are going to say, well, get up, let's go. What are you waiting on? You're like, whoa, hold on, I don't want to do that yet. Well, that's too bad, let's go. Come on, here we go. You're like, okay, fine, I guess. What are we just going to jump in with both feet? Yeah, we're just going to jump in with both feet. I'm like, okay, fine. And if you notice when you hang around those people enough, like you might get a little fear and anxiety at first, but apparently they have none. But they'll mold you into those people. So do you need zealots in your life? Yeah, you need the good quality of zealots in your life. All right, remember I said that was the end, didn't I? Okay, back to Jesus' ministry. Let's think about this. Does Jesus teach or walk any kind of hatred? Ever? He doesn't. He doesn't ever teach about any kind of hatred, right? As a positive way. Negative way, sure. But as a positive way, no. So as we keep going through these groups, we're going to keep going through them and we're going to find that they lack forgiveness. And one thing that we're going to see is this one group that we're not going to talk about a whole lot, and it's going to be called the Herodians, okay? They were the people that really liked Hellenism, really liked Herod, kind of threw a little God in their life. And what we're going to find is these people are the fastest people to forgive. And that hurts. And that hurts. Because sometimes we get way too tied up in religious philosophy and legalistic ideas that we turn into a Pharisee. And we're like, well, you're doing that wrong. You're doing that wrong. You know that, right? And you can't forgive people. And you can't see why they are doing what they are doing. And even when they don't do that thing, you know what I'm talking about? Even when they don't do that thing, you can still find something else wrong. That one little thing. Herodians, they're just like, yeah, man, you're here. Let's go. Like, they didn't really care who you were. Let's look at it this way. In first century Judaism, when somebody walked up to your house and needed to come inside, guess what they did? They let them inside. Because they were a people of radical hospitality. We say that we are a people of radical hospitality until some random person shows up at your door and you're like, what you doing? You coming inside? No. We're going to go outside and we're going to sit down for a while first. That's not forgiveness. That's not loving your neighbor as we're supposed to do, right? But that's how we look at it. Like, think about the birth of Jesus. They walked into, if you study it out, they walked into a random person's house. And they gave them the house, the best that they had. And remember, the best that they had wasn't very good at all. If you remember that teaching of the house we put up here, and you could see where they actually lived in the house with their animals, which is why you hear of Jesus getting put in a trough, like a feeding trough or a stable, as you might call it, because they literally lived like right here, and then here were the animals. No wall, by the way. They lived here, here were the animals. And when Mary and Joseph came in, they literally gave them their house. They gave them the best that they had, which was their house. And who knows if they had a guest room or another place that they could stay. But they literally gave them where they lived. Imagine a pregnant lady walking up to your door saying, I don't have any other place to go. And you open the door for her, let her in your house, and you walk outside. Is that giving them the best that you have? It is giving them the best that you have. That's what they did for Jesus. That is like a full-on heart of love and forgiveness that I can't even fathom. Okay. Here's where I really want to end it, because it says this is the end, right? Okay. The Bible is a book about forgiveness. Genesis is a book about forgiveness through brotherly relationships. Watch this. I don't think I put these on here. Okay, that's fine. I'll read off the verses here. Cain and Abel. How did their relationship end? Death. They killed each other. Well, they didn't kill him. But one brother killed the other brother. Okay? It's about brothers here. One brother killed the other brother. Go to Genesis 4:8. The next brotherly relationship. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. How did that end? They didn't kill him. But Ham got cursed by his father, right? So it's like, okay, we got a progression here. At least he didn't kill him. So the first one ended in death. This one ended in a cursing. Genesis 9:25. Let's look at the next one. Isaac and Ishmael. How did their relationship go? It wasn't so good. Almost. That's the next one. Isaac and Ishmael. It's in Genesis 25:9. They do reunite, but that's it. So they do forgive, but that's it. Jacob and Esau. Here's the stolen blessing. Jacob and Esau. Genesis 33:4. They reunite as well. But what do? It goes a little bit further on in forgiveness. They reunite and they embrace each other, which means they hug each other. They're affectionate towards each other. See how love is starting to come through this now? They start to re-love each other. Now watch this. The end of Genesis 50:15 through 21. Jacob and his brothers, that ends with forgiveness. One book goes from murder to forgiveness on the brothers. And guess what? If you read your Bible from beginning to end, it does the same thing, because God forgives his people. And if you want to put another word in there, he redeems his people. From the beginning to the end. Now, this is really the end. Okay? I got one more thing I want to share with you. And it's like 2 sentences, okay? Remember, I'm not big on endings. I want you to leave here with your gears kind of going a little bit, thinking about things. This is from a guy named Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. It says this: when people lack the ability to forgive, they are unable to resolve conflict. The result is division, factionalism, and the fragmentation of a nation into competing groups and sects. Those who seek freedom must learn to forgive. And that's where I leave you. Father, I thank you so much for this time that we could get together. I thank you so much for this time that we could come together and study your word at a deeper level, to have more of an understanding of who you are, God, and what you want to do throughout our lives, our community, and God, just your people. God, let us be a people who can forgive. Let us be a people who can be compassionate. God, let us be a people who can love one another and actually love our neighbor as ourselves, like you have told us to do. Father, give us the heart, give us the mind, give us the will and the emotions to walk this out. In Jesus, your wonderful name I pray. Amen.